I was never supposed to represent humanity at the most important diplomatic summit in galactic history. I was supposed to carry briefing tablets, refill coffee, and occasionally remind Ambassador Grayson not to insult species with more than 4 arms. Instead, Grayson got food poisoning from a shrimp-like alien delicacy that apparently only dissolves 80% of internal organs, and suddenly I was sitting in humanity's chair, while 7 alien empires screamed at each other across a chamber bigger than a football stadium. The room looked less like diplomacy and more like the universe's angriest divorce court. 3 reptilian warlords were hissing threats across the table. A cybernetic emperor kept slamming mechanical fists into glowing holograms. One floating gas being had changed colors so many times I was pretty sure it was having an emotional breakdown. Meanwhile, I was sitting there eating vending machine peanuts, because humanity still hadn't figured out interstellar catering. That alone made every species uncomfortable. Apparently no sane creature casually snacks while discussing potential galactic extinction. One insectoid delegate slowly pointed at me. Is the human consuming nutrients during wartime negotiations? I shrugged. Stress eating. It's either peanuts or alcoholism. The translation drones paused for a full second before transmitting my answer. Half the room looked horrified. The other half looked curious. Humanity had only joined the galactic community 8 years earlier, and already we had a reputation. Too loud, too reckless, too emotional, too impossible to predict. Apparently most advanced civilizations became cold and hyper-logical after reaching the stars. Humans reached space and immediately started flirting with dangerous species and putting racing stripes on military ships. Honestly, I was proud of us. Then the chamber doors opened. Every voice stopped instantly. Queen Liriana Vex entered the room like she owned gravity itself. She was nearly 10 feet tall, wrapped in black ceremonial armor that looked forged from the night sky. Gold markings glowed softly across her shoulders, while a dark crimson cape dragged behind her like spilled blood. Every ruler in the chamber lowered their eyes. I did not, mostly because I was too busy thinking, yep, I could absolutely ruin my life for that woman. The queen sat on her throne at the center platform while silence crushed the room flat. Even breathing suddenly felt disrespectful. Then she spoke. The alliance is collapsing. Her voice was calm. That somehow made it scarier. 1 week remains before succession protocols expire. If no royal union is formed, the empire fractures. If the empire fractures, war follows. A hologram exploded above the chamber. Thousands of ships. Burning planets. Death projections climbing into the billions. Well, that certainly killed the mood. One armored king rose from his seat. Then choose a worthy ruler. Another slammed his tail against the floor. You mean choose you? The reptilian king snarled. At least I possess functioning courage. Oh please, another ruler snapped. Your species lost a war against weather. The argument detonated instantly. Insults, threats, military ultimatums. At one point, a 6-eyed general literally pulled out a ceremonial blade. I leaned toward the human translator beside me. Do alien summits always feel one insult away from becoming a nightclub stabbing? The translator tried not to laugh. Failed. Unfortunately, my microphone was still active. The joke echoed through the entire chamber. Every head turned toward me. Fantastic, I gave a weak smile. Human humor. Very advanced diplomatic technique. One towering alien guard near the queen stared down at me. Careful, human. Our queen crushes weak males. I glanced at Liriana, then back at him. Depends how she's doing it, silence. Absolute silence. One advisor dropped his data tablet. Somewhere across the chamber, a diplomat actually choked on his own breathing. The queen slowly turned her eyes toward me, and for one terrifying second, I thought I might actually die. Then I noticed something strange. The corner of her mouth twitched. Not much. Barely noticeable. But definitely there. Oh no. The giant, terrifying queen was trying not to laugh. That somehow felt more dangerous than execution. The negotiations kept spiraling downward after that. Every king wanted the throne. Nobody trusted each other. Several empires were already mobilizing fleets near disputed systems. The entire galaxy was balancing on a knife edge while I sat there, wondering whether it was too late to fake my own death. Hours passed. Arguments became shouting matches. At one point, 2 ambassadors had to be separated by armed guards because apparently one species considered aggressive finger-pointing a mating challenge. Aliens were exhausting. Finally, Queen Liriana stood from her throne again. Instant silence. "If no agreement is reached today," she said coldly, "civil conflict becomes inevitable." Nobody answered. Because everyone wanted power more than peace. That was the moment my exhausted brain made the worst decision of my entire life. I leaned back in my chair and muttered, "Honestly, Your Majesty, at this point you should just marry me and get it over with." A few humans snorted. Several delegates laughed nervously. Even I chuckled. Because, obviously, it was a joke. Right? The Queen did not laugh. She stared directly at me. Then she stood. Slowly, the sound of her armored footsteps echoed through the chamber as she walked down from the throne platform. Toward me. Every instinct in my body screamed that I should run. Unfortunately, my legs had stopped cooperating with management. She stopped inches away from my chair. Up close, she was somehow even more terrifying. And unfairly attractive. Her golden eyes locked onto mine. "You would offer yourself willingly?" she asked. My mouth suddenly felt very dry. "I mean, when you say it like that, it sounds way more serious." Several alien nobles looked physically ill. The Queen studied me silently. Then one massive hand settled onto my shoulder. Warm, heavy, possessive enough to make the entire chamber tense instantly. And then she spoke the single sentence that destroyed my peaceful existence forever. "Accepted." The chamber exploded. Alarm sirens blared overhead. Delegates started shouting. One military officer actually fainted. I blinked twice. "Wait, hold on. Accepted?" A horrified advisor rushed forward. By galactic succession law, a public royal acceptance witnessed by sovereign powers is fully binding. I stared at him. Then at the Queen. Then back at him. "You're telling me I accidentally proposed?" The advisor looked like he wanted to crawl into space and die. "You accidentally became the future king consort of the largest empire in existence." My soul left my body for a moment. Across the chamber, the reptilian warlord pointed at me furiously. This human manipulated the Queen. I raised both hands immediately. "Buddy, I can barely operate the hotel shower in this station." But nobody was listening anymore. Military guards flooded the room. Emergency diplomatic protocols activated. News drones descended from the ceiling like vultures smelling fresh meat. And through all the chaos, Queen Liriana still hadn't removed her hand from my shoulder. She leaned slightly closer. Close enough for only me to hear. "You seem distressed, husband." I looked up at the terrifyingly beautiful alien queen I had accidentally proposed to in front of the entire galaxy. Then at the hundreds of furious rulers glaring at me like they wanted to turn my skeleton into modern art. I whispered carefully, really should have kept my mouth shut. The first thing I learned about alien royal marriages was that nobody cared whether the groom agreed afterward. Apparently consent was assumed the moment the Queen accepted publicly, which felt less like romance and more like getting drafted into the world's sexiest hostage situation. I was escorted through the royal palace by 12 armored guards, while thousands of drones filmed my every movement for the entire galaxy. News headlines floated through the air around me. Human diplomat claims the Void Queen. Royal consort is shockingly small. Interspecies compatibility debates explode across the core worlds. That last headline worried me for several reasons. "You people move fast," I muttered. A nearby servant looked confused. "Political instability encourages aggressive reproduction discussions." I regret asking. The palace itself looked absurdly expensive. Black crystal walls. Floating chandeliers. Entire indoor waterfalls glowing with blue bioluminescence. Meanwhile, humanity's embassy still had vending machines that occasionally electrocuted people for fun. I was led into a massive preparation chamber where at least 20 servants immediately surrounded me. One scanned my body with a hovering device. Another pulled at my jacket. A third stared directly at my chest like she was evaluating livestock. "This one is physically unimpressive," one servant announced. "Rude," another checked her datapad. "Human males compensate through unusual endurance." I blinked. "I'm sorry. What kind of research has humanity been publishing?" Nobody answered. That was somehow worse. Within seconds, they started stripping away my diplomatic uniform. "Whoa, hold on. Buy me dinner first," one servant tilted her head. "Dinner occurs after the oiling process." "The what process?" 3 more servants entered carrying silver containers full of steaming liquid. "Oh no, absolutely not. I just want everyone here to know," I announced carefully, "that on Earth this entire situation would require several lawyers." Nobody listened. 10 minutes later, I was sitting shirtless on a polished stone platform while alien attendants rubbed glowing oils onto my shoulders. Honestly, not the worst diplomatic assignment humanity had ever suffered. One older servant circled around me thoughtfully. Muscle density below royal standards. Another servant touched my arm experimentally. "Yet structurally resilient," I pointed at her. "See? She gets it," a mechanical voice suddenly echoed through the chamber. "Royal fertility compatibility examination beginning." I sat upright instantly. "The royal what examination?" Every servant looked confused by my panic. One finally explained. "The queen must produce heirs eventually." I stared at them. Then at the ceiling. Then briefly considered throwing myself out the nearest airlock. "This galaxy moves way too fast." The servants continued discussing me like I was a newly purchased appliance. "Human emotional bonding instincts appear unusually strong." "Yes, but mating rituals remain chaotic. Reports indicate humans flirt recreationally." "That can't possibly be true." I raised a hand weakly. "Oh, it's very true. We flirt when bored. Sometimes we flirt to survive awkward conversations." The entire room fell silent. One servant whispered, horrified, "That species truly is unstable." Exactly. Finally, the chamber doors opened. Every servant immediately bowed. Queen Lyriana entered wearing dark ceremonial robes that somehow looked even more dangerous than armor. Her golden eyes moved across the room before settling on me. Still shirtless, covered in glowing oil. Fantastic. Her gaze lingered slightly too long, I noticed. Unfortunately, my mouth also noticed. "Well," I said carefully, "this is either the weirdest diplomatic crisis in history or the best spa day I've ever had." One servant gasped. The queen's expression barely changed. But I saw it again. That tiny, almost smile. She dismissed the attendants with a gesture. The moment we were alone, the room suddenly felt much smaller. Which was impressive considering it could probably fit a small airport. The queen stepped closer. "You are adapting surprisingly well." "I'm emotionally disassociating," I admitted. "Humans are great at it." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "You fear me less than the others." "Oh, I definitely fear you. I'm just distracted by several other emotions currently fighting for dominance." That actually earned a soft exhale from her. Alien queen laughter apparently came in microscopic doses. "Progress." She circled me slowly while studying the medical scans hovering nearby. "This says human males possess unusual stamina." I coughed immediately. "I'd like to officially state that humanity did not approve whatever study produced that sentence." "You appear embarrassed. You're 8 feet of royal authority reading my species' bedroom reviews out loud." "For political purposes, sure. Politics, of course." To my horror, the queen moved even closer. Close enough that I could feel warmth radiating from her body. "You joke constantly under pressure," she observed. "Defense mechanism, explain." I shrugged. "If humans stop laughing during terrifying situations, we usually start screaming." She considered that quietly. like the idea genuinely fascinated her. That was the strange thing about Liriana. Beneath all the terrifying queen energy, she seemed lonely. Every person around her acted terrified of saying the wrong thing. Meanwhile, I'd accidentally proposed marriage within 10 minutes of meeting her. Honestly, maybe that was refreshing. A loud alarm suddenly interrupted the moment. Red lights flashed across the chamber. The queen's expression hardened instantly. Security breach, the palace doors exploded inward. Masked figures charged into the room with plasma blades blazing blue. Assassins, because apparently fake marriage drama wasn't stressful enough already. The first attacker lunged directly toward the queen. I reacted before thinking, mostly because humans specialize in stupid decisions under pressure. I grabbed the nearest metal tray and slammed it into the assassin's face. The impact echoed through the chamber. The assassin stumbled backward. I stared at the tray in disbelief. That actually worked. 3 more attackers rushed forward. The queen moved like a living weapon. One assassin hit the wall hard enough to crack stone. Another got lifted by the throat one-handed. Meanwhile, I was improvising survival techniques with the confidence of a drunk raccoon. An assassin charged me. I panicked and grabbed the nearest cylinder. Fire suppressant foam exploded directly into the attacker's visor. The assassin screamed blindly and crashed through a decorative fountain. I pointed triumphantly. Human engineering, baby. More guards stormed into the room. The surviving assassins retreated instantly. Silence returned slowly. One royal guard stared at me in shock. Why would a diplomat engage enemy combatants? I was breathing too hard to sound intelligent. Honestly, felt rude not to help. The guards looked genuinely confused by that answer. The queen, however, kept staring at me. Not coldly, not politically, differently, like she was seeing something unexpected. One guard approached carefully. "Your Majesty, you should be relocated immediately." Liriana ignored him. Her eyes stayed locked on mine. "You defended me," I shrugged awkwardly. "Well, yeah. Kinda hard to continue the marriage scam if you die." The guard beside her looked horrified that I'd called the royal union a scam out loud. The queen stepped closer again. "You continue surprising me, human," I smiled nervously. Most women say that after the second date. And finally, the most feared ruler in the galaxy laughed. Not politely, not quietly. An actual laugh. Every guard in the room froze like they just witnessed a religious miracle. Honestly, same. Then the queen looked at me with dangerous amusement glowing in her golden eyes. "To preserve political stability," she said calmly, "we must share royal chambers tonight." Every single survival instinct in my body immediately resigned. The royal chambers looked less like a bedroom and more like a luxury resort designed by emotionally unstable billionaires. The ceiling alone was higher than most apartment buildings on Earth. Dark glass walls revealed entire galaxies drifting outside, while glowing blue waterfalls ran through channels in the floor. And the bed? The bed was horrifying. It was the size of a small landing platform. I stopped walking immediately. That bed could support air traffic. Queen Liriana glanced at it calmly. "Royal furnishings are built for my species. Your species planning to host wrestling tournaments on this thing?" She ignored that, which was probably wise. I followed her deeper into the chamber while trying very hard not to think about the fact that I was technically sharing a room with the deadliest woman in the known galaxy. A soft scent drifted through the air. Sweet, warm, distractingly pleasant. I frowned. "What's that smell?" "Relaxation pheromones," I stopped again. "You people really need warning labels on things." The queen removed part of her ceremonial armor with slow, deliberate movements, while I respectfully stared at literally anything else in the room. The walls. The ceiling. A glowing alien plant. Death. Mostly death. "You appear tense," she observed. "Your Majesty, I'm a human trapped in a room with the hottest war criminal in the galaxy. Of course I'm tense." That earned another tiny smile. I was starting to realize something terrifying. The Queen genuinely enjoyed my stupidity. She moved toward a crystal table holding 2 glasses filled with glowing silver liquid. "Drink," she ordered. I eyed the liquid suspiciously. How dangerous is that sentence in alien culture? "It is. Alcohol. Okay, good. Humanity understands alcohol. Probably too well." I took the glass carefully. One sip hit me like rocket fuel. My throat burned. My vision sharpened. And suddenly I understood why alien diplomacy kept becoming violent. This tastes like a reactor leak. It is considered mild. Your species is insane. Your species eats fermented poison recreationally. Fair point. For a while the room became strangely quiet. Not awkward quiet. Comfortable quiet. Which felt weird considering our relationship technically started as a galactic accident. Finally, I looked at her. "Can I ask something honestly?" "You may. Why me?" Her golden eyes settled on mine. Every joke in my brain suddenly packed its bags and left. "The kings desired power," she said softly. "The generals desired conquest. The nobles desired status. And me? You made me laugh, well, that hit harder than expected." She walked closer slowly. "You spoke to me as if I were normal." I blinked. "You're 10 feet tall and can probably bench press military vehicles." "Yes." "That's not normal." Another faint smile. "But you were not afraid," she continued. I leaned against the table. "Oh, I'm terrified. Humans just hide fear differently." "How?" I thought about it for a second, then shrugged. "We joke. We laugh. We act stupid, because if we stop doing that during bad situations," I exhaled slowly, "we start breaking." The Queen became very still after that, like nobody had ever explained humans to her before. Honestly, most humans couldn't explain humans. We were basically emotional support chaos monkeys with nuclear weapons. The silence stretched again until suddenly a soft musical tone echoed through the chamber. Romantic music began playing from hidden speakers. I looked around. The Queen closed her eyes briefly. Automated royal atmosphere systems, a holographic sky filled with glowing stars appeared above the bed. Then flower petals started falling from the ceiling. I burst out laughing. The Queen looked genuinely annoyed. The chamber AI assumes intimacy protocols whenever royal pairs occupy the same quarters. I nearly dropped my drink. Intimacy protocols? That sounds medically aggressive. The AI voice suddenly echoed overhead. Recommended breeding temperature achieved. I pointed upward immediately. "See? This room is threatening me." For the first time, the Queen actually laughed hard enough to look slightly embarrassed afterward. That alone probably altered galactic history. A few hours later, we sat together near the panoramic window overlooking the capital planet. And somehow, we just talked. No politics. No royal pressure. Just conversation. I told her about Earth. About terrible human cooking experiments. About internet conspiracy theories. About humanity once losing an entire satellite because someone forgot basic math. She stared at me in disbelief. "Your species reached interstellar travel accidentally." Pretty much. Then she tried using human slang. That was catastrophic. At one point she looked at a passing royal guard and confidently announced, "That male possesses substantial cake." The guard looked spiritually damaged. I nearly fell off my chair laughing. "You can't just say that randomly. You told me it was a compliment. Context matters. Humans make no sense." "That's fair." Another alarm suddenly interrupted us. This time louder. More violent. Red emergency symbols flashed across the chamber windows. The Queen stood instantly. "Not another assassination attempt," I groaned. A royal officer appeared through holographic transmission. "Your Majesty, hostile fleets are entering orbit. Several military houses have declared rebellion." Well, that escalated quickly. The officer continued. "Lord Vael accuses the human consort of manipulating the crown through seduction." I nearly choked on my drink. "What seduction?" I accidentally flirted myself into political slavery. The Queen's eyes hardened dangerously at the mention of Vael. He moved sooner than expected. Explosions suddenly shook the palace. The lights flickered. Another officer screamed through comms. Enemy forces breached the eastern sectors. The Queen immediately activated a hidden weapons compartment inside the wall. Because apparently every royal bedroom in this galaxy included emergency war gear. Reasonable, she handed me a compact plasma pistol. I stared at it. You trust me with this? You attacked assassins using a serving tray. Also fair. More explosions thundered nearby. The palace was under full assault now. Royal guards rushed through corridors while automated defense cannons activated overhead, and somehow I was still underdressed for all of it. We moved quickly through emergency corridors beneath the palace while alarms screamed non-stop around us. Enemy soldiers breached a security door ahead. The Queen charged first, because apparently subtlety had never met this woman. I fired wildly behind her while trying not to shoot expensive architecture. One enemy soldier aimed toward us. I panicked and hit a random control panel beside the wall. A blast of superheated steam erupted directly into the corridor. Enemy troops screamed and scattered instantly. I stared at the panel proudly. Human problem solving. The Queen looked back briefly. You pressed a random button, and it worked. You are either brilliant or deeply concerning. Humanity's entire history in one sentence. We kept moving. Another squad blocked our escape near a massive ceremonial hall. The Queen prepared to attack again before I grabbed her arm. I got this. You? Trust me. Honestly, I had no idea what I was doing. But humans survive through confidence and lies. Mostly lies. I activated the hall's communication system and shouted attention. Royal reactor breach detected. Evacuate immediately. Every enemy soldier froze. One panicked instantly. Reactor breach? Another dropped his weapon and ran. Within seconds, the entire squad retreated in chaos. The Queen stared at me. There was no reactor breach. Correct. That was deception. That was diplomacy. Before she could answer, enemy drones suddenly flew overhead, scanning the hallway. I instinctively pulled her behind a pillar. Too close. Way too close. The drones paused nearby. Searching, without warning, the Queen grabbed my face and kissed me. My brain completely stopped functioning. The drones passed overhead and continued onward. A few seconds later, she stepped back calmly. That was tactical, she said. I stared at her. Then at the drones disappearing into the distance. Then back at her perfectly composed expression. Uh-huh, I said slowly. Sure it was. By the next morning, the entire galaxy thought I was some kind of criminal mastermind seducing the most dangerous woman alive. Reality was slightly less impressive. I was currently losing a fight against royal clothing. This clasp makes no sense, I muttered while wrestling with a black ceremonial jacket, worth more than Earth's yearly military budget. Queen Liriana watched from across the room with visible amusement. You are struggling. Your people built this outfit like a security system. It is ceremonial armor. It has 17 hidden locks. That is for elegance. That is psychological warfare. She crossed the room and fixed the collar effortlessly with one hand. Unfortunately, she did it while standing extremely close. Again, this woman either enjoyed making me nervous or genuinely had no concept of personal space. Possibly both. Outside the palace windows, the capital world was in chaos. Rebel fleets filled orbit. News drones swarmed the skies. Every screen across the galaxy replayed footage of our accidental engagement, the palace attack, and increasingly ridiculous theories about humanity. One commentator dramatically announced, "Human males may possess advanced pheromonal manipulation abilities." I nearly spit out my drink. Advanced pheromonal manipulation? I repeated, "Lady, I once got rejected by a cashier at a gas station." Liriana tilted her head. "What is a gas station?" "A magical human location where we buy unhealthy food and emotional disappointment." Before she could reply, another emergency transmission appeared. A military commander bowed quickly. "Your Majesty, rebel fleets are approaching the inner defense perimeter." The Queen's expression hardened instantly. Estimated time? Less than 1 hour. Great nothing says healthy marriage like surviving orbital warfare together. The commander disappeared. I looked toward the massive tactical hologram floating above the chamber. Enemy fleets surrounded the planet from 3 directions. Alien commanders argued constantly over formation precision and honor protocols. Everything looked rigid. Predictable, which meant humans immediately had an advantage. Because humanity specialized in doing things nobody sane would attempt. I pointed at the tactical display. Your generals think too clean. Liriana looked at me carefully. Explain. Every move here follows logic. Patterns, expectations. I smirked slightly. Humans fight dirty. That is not reassuring. It shouldn't be. A nearby officer stepped forward nervously. With respect, human tactics are considered highly unstable. Exactly, I said proudly. That was the problem with advanced civilizations. The more sophisticated they became, the more predictable they got. Humans never evolved that issue, because half our ideas came from sleep deprivation and panic. I studied the hologram closely, then slowly started smiling. Oh, this is stupid, Liriana narrowed her eyes. You have a plan. Oh. Absolutely terrible plan. The Queen looked relieved, which honestly said concerning things about how well she understood me already. 20 minutes later, I stood inside the Royal Command Center, trying to explain human chaos strategy to deeply confused alien officers. So here's what we do, I began. We fake surrender. The entire room erupted instantly. One general slammed both fists onto the table. Impossible. Another looked horrified. That violates military pride. A third officer hissed aggressively. Coward strategy. I pointed at him. Exactly, which is why they won't expect it. Nobody liked that answer. Humans had discovered centuries ago that pride gets people killed faster than stupidity. And humanity had extensive experience with both. I continued quickly. While they move in expecting victory, we overload the entertainment satellites orbiting the capital. Silence. One officer blinked. The entertainment satellites? Yes. Why? Because every enemy ship taps into public broadcasts during surrender events. I grinned wider. Which means we hijack every screen in their fleet simultaneously. The room stayed quiet. Liriana folded her arms. And broadcast what exactly? Oh, you're gonna love this part. A few minutes later, we recorded the most unhinged military propaganda video in galactic history. I stood beside the Queen while emergency lights flashed dramatically around us. Attention rebel forces, I announced into the camera. Congratulations, you've officially declared war on the one species emotionally unstable enough to weaponize bad ideas. The Queen glanced sideways at me. I kept going. Also, Lord Viel illegally funded pirate fleets using royal disaster relief funds. We have receipts. Behind us, hacked financial records exploded across the screen. Alien officers around the room stared at me like I'd escaped containment. Wait, one asked slowly. You already investigated him? I shrugged. Humans become terrifying when bored. The transmission launched across every communication system in orbit. Chaos erupted immediately. Enemy fleets started turning on each other as commanders demanded explanations from Viel. Several ships broke formation. One cruiser accidentally fired on an allied vessel during the confusion. Beautiful. Humanity had entered the galaxy and immediately introduced everyone to psychological warfare fueled by public embarrassment. Viel himself finally appeared on screen, furious beyond reason. You manipulative little parasite, I waved cheerfully. Hey buddy, quick question. How illegal is treason around here? His face somehow became even angrier. Honestly impressive. Then the final phase of the plan began. Entertainment satellites overloaded exactly as scheduled. Except instead of surrender broadcasts, the entire rebel fleet suddenly received human music at maximum volume. Ancient Earth rock music exploded across military frequencies, while emergency lights flashed through enemy cockpits. One alien officer stared at me in disbelief. Is this combat audio? Technically, yes. Why are the humans screaming about thunder? It boosts morale. It sounds medically unsafe. That means it's working. Enemy coordination collapsed completely within minutes. Ships crashed into each other. Command systems overloaded. Panic spread faster than actual damage. Humans had discovered the galaxy's greatest weakness. Aliens took dignity too seriously. Meanwhile, humanity evolved by surviving internet arguments and energy drinks. During the battle, another explosion rocked the palace. A damaged rebel strike team breached the command sector directly. Weapons fired instantly. Guards rushed forward. I ducked behind the tactical console. Why does every political event become cardio? Liriana stepped directly in front of me, energy blade igniting bright crimson. One attacker charged. She dropped him in half a second. Another aimed toward my position. I reacted on instinct and threw the nearest object. Unfortunately, the nearest object was a decorative royal statue. The heavy metal sculpture smashed directly into the attacker's helmet. The entire command room froze. I stared at the broken statue. I feel like I should apologize to an artist. One officer whispered softly, "The human killed a soldier using interior decoration." Honestly? Fair reaction. The battle outside finally began shifting. Rebel fleets retreated. Vale's allies abandoned him. And slowly the capital stabilized. The Queen turned toward me while alarms faded around us. "You saved the Empire," I raised a finger. Important correction. I emotionally traumatized the Empire into survival. That still counts then. In front of the entire command staff, the Queen stepped closer and took my hand publicly. Every officer in the room instantly pretended not to stare. Liriana's golden eyes locked onto mine. "This marriage began as political necessity," she said calmly. The room became silent. "But I now choose it willingly." Well, that hit me right in the emotional support issues. I smiled slowly. You know, most relationships move a little slower before the attempted coups. Human courtship appears inefficient. That's because we usually avoid orbital warfare until at least the third date. A few nearby officers accidentally laughed. The Queen looked almost proud of that. Outside the palace windows, dawn finally rose over the capital world. For the first time since this disaster started, the galaxy was peaceful. Liriana studied me quietly for a moment. "Do humans always joke before changing history?" I looked out at the recovering city lights below. Then back at the terrifying alien queen who somehow no longer felt terrifying. "Usually," I admitted. "Makes the terrifying parts easier. For once, neither of us joked afterward." The silence said enough. A few hours later, after military celebrations started flooding the palace, the Queen pulled me aside privately. "You still have not completed all royal husband duties," she said softly. I nearly choked immediately. I had a feeling the job description was incomplete. That dangerous little smile returned again. Honestly, that smile caused more damage to my nervous system than the Civil War. Months later, historians would write about how humanity saved the Empire through adaptability, emotional resilience, and unconventional strategy, which sounded much more respectable than the truth. The truth was that a sleep-deprived human diplomat made one bad joke at the worst possible moment and accidentally married the most dangerous woman in the galaxy. Turns out that wasn't even the craziest part. The craziest part was realizing I'd do it again without hesitation. Because somewhere between assassination attempts, political disasters, and dangerously flirtatious war crimes, the fake marriage stopped feeling fake. And honestly, marrying the alien queen turned out to be the best bad decision of my life.